Hello, my name is Osha. I like talking about American presidents. Today, I want to talk about our president's affiliation with Freemasonry. Importantly, not all our presidents were Freemasons, but of our 45 presidents, a third, at least a third, have been Freemasons, have been associated with Freemasonry. That's 15, right? That's a significant number, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a Freemason to be president. Just like about 70% of our nation's presidents have been lawyers, have been attorneys, or at least over 60%. But it doesn't mean you have to be a lawyer to be an American president. Most of our Many of our presidents have also been soldiers. It doesn't mean you should have been soldiers. You should have been a soldier in order to, or you have to be a soldier to become an American president. So what I'm saying is, Freemasonry, being a Freemason, it's not a requirement. It's not a prerequisite to become an American president. And in fact, I doubt if it is significant at all to, or even have any. I doubt if it even has any relevance or connection with the presidency. By the way, I'm somebody who's never into secret societies, and at the end, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of story that I recall, but I want to get on with it first and discuss the list of American presidents who've been Freemasons. But I have a little story regarding a secret society, from back home that I want to share. Now, additionally, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't, I shun, conspiracy theories, but of course, America has an obsession with conspiracy theories, and I'm going to get to discussing the conspiracy theories surrounding John F. Kennedy's, assassination. So I thought it was interesting to just, do something on Freemasonry and our presidency. By the way, I read, when I was wrongfully detained, I read War and Peace, which is over 1,200 pages. War and Peace is considered, written by Leo Tolstoy, right? The Russian Count Leo Tolstoy was an aristocrat. It is considered the greatest novel, widely, arguably considered the greatest novel. But it was a very interesting novel. Tolstoy talks about Freemasonry, and he goes into it extensively in his book, because his main protagonist, a guy called Count Pierre Count Pierre Bezukhov, who was an illegitimate son of the richest man in Russia, right? So he inherited wealth. At some point, he joined a society of Freemasons. He became a Freemason. So he talked extensively about it. And, in the book, there's this secret initiation. Freemasonry, by the way, I'm not saying it's a secret society because they're so ubiquitous, they're symbols, I remember I graduated from George Washington University Law School, and there are these conspicuous Freemason symbols all over the place. The all-seeing eye, a compass, and a square. So they're supposed to be Freemason symbols. George Washington himself, our first president, was a Freemason, and I'll get on with the list. But in fact, let me list the presidents first of all. 15 of them have been presidents. 15 of our presidents have been Freemasons, of our 45 presidents. Yes, we have a number 47, but remember, we have two presidents who had served non-consecutive terms. So Grover Cleveland, he was number 40. He was number 22 and 24. He was not a Freemason, by the way. And Donald Trump is number 45, 47. He was not a known Freemason either. So our first president, George Washington, was a Freemason. And our second wasn't a Freemason, right? Neither was our third, neither was our fourth. But our fifth president, James Monroe, was a Freemason as well. And importantly, these presidents became Freemasons when they were very young men, right? I think George Washington was a Freemason when he was 20 years old or so. Young people don't make the best decisions. They don't make the best choices, right? So again, Freemasonry, they're not necessarily a secret society, but they call them a society with many secrets, right? They're a society with many secrets. I'll continue with the list again. First president, George Washington, was a Freemason. James Monroe was a Freemason. Andrew Jackson was a Freemason. James Knox Polk was a Freemason. James Buchanan was a Freemason. Andrew Johnson was a Freemason. James Garfield was a Freemason. There's so many bugs. I'm being beaten. I'm in the garden, and so there are bugs all over the place. So excuse my fidgeting. As I mentioned, James Garfield was a Freemason. William McKinley was a Freemason. Teddy Roosevelt was a known Freemason. William Howard Taft, his protege, was a known Freemason, and he became a Chief Justice. So I wonder how many Chief Justices of the Supreme Court have been Freemasons as well. After him, Warren G. Harding was a Freemason. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a Freemason. I'd mentioned that Teddy Roosevelt was a Freemason. Harry Truman, his successor, was a Freemason as well. And Lyndon Johnson was a Freemason. And Gerald Ford. So I think I've listed the 15. But importantly, Freemasonry, again, they're a society with many secrets. Their symbols were very conspicuous all over the place. And once I got on a bus, and there was a man. I love public transportation. I like to ride public transportation. So many years ago, I think about 20 years ago, I got on a bus. This was in Maryland, and some guy got on a bus with me. He had a ring on, a huge ring, and he struck up a conversation with me. I'm somebody who's friendly. I can strike up a conversation anywhere, but this man initiated the conversation with me. He was a white man. He had a huge beard, and he started telling me about he asked me if I ever seen a ring like his before. I said no. So he told me it was a ring signifying that he was a Freemason, and he talked about how important he was. So it was one of those people who was trying to show me that he was an important person. And this is something that I noticed about people who belong in societies, secret societies, esoteric societies. I once met a guy. When I was in Nigeria, I was a teenager, maybe like 18, just gotten into college, and my best friend and I went for a wedding party, and there was this older guy, right? It was a wedding party. My friend had driven us there, and there was this much older guy. He was probably in his 30s or 40s, we were about 18 then. And he started telling us how he belonged to one of these confraternities in the Nigerian university. So confraternities, secret cults, societies, they were very notorious in Nigeria. They got into very gruesome things because this was an era of military dictatorships, and so I guess that spurred their rise, and it made them very violent because military dictatorships are also very violent. So this guy was telling us he belonged to the secret society. He was also showing us a ring, and he was telling us how powerful he was, how he had access to governors. He could call military governor and they'd give him a favor. He could call a federal minister. A federal minister is the American equivalent. You'd call them a secretary, like instead of saying Secretary of Defense in America, in Nigeria would say a Minister of Defense, like they say, like the UK system. That's what they say in the UK as well. Back and forth. Anyway, I think they use secretary in some instances as well. But anyway, in Nigeria, we call them ministers, right? A federal minister of state, not a minister. Well, we call it foreign affairs in Nigeria. In America, the equivalent, the counterpart of the Nigerian foreign, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in America would be Secretary of State. So this guy was telling us back then that he had access to all these very powerful people. And then at the end of his spiel, he asked us, he told us he had a Porsche. He was driving a Porsche. He had it outside. Showed us the keys, everything. After, we tried to get away from him, but, we were young people who were very friendly and polite, and, we were respectful, right? So it's a normal thing to do in Nigeria when you're growing up, especially from my culture. I'm Yoruba, right? So eventually, as we were leaving, he now begged us for a ride. And so this was the guy who was saying he had a Porsche parked out. He had one of the best cars outside, but he was asking us for a ride to take him home. So, basically, something you'd find out of many people in some of these societies, secret esoteric societies, and they're normally a mix. They're normally people who want to assume some status. They feel underprivileged. They feel they didn't come from good upbringing, birth, or whatever. So you can see people like Andrew Jackson, who had been an orphan, who was a Freemason. Many people like that. George Washington, he became one of the wealthiest men in America. He became a general, but you could see George Washington himself still had this sense of inferiority. He had a strong sense of inferiority complex when you read his biography, and he was a very decent man, but you could see that sense. Alexander Hamilton had to deal, as much as a genius he was, and as confident, he was a very confident man. He was a genius and all that stuff. But you could see, but his background still had cause for, it was riddled with insecurities, or reason for him to have insecurity because of the poverty, because of his illegitimate birth, the fact his mother had been sent to an insane asylum for adultery, had the scarlet letter, things like that. And throughout his life in America, in spite of his achievements, he was always called a foreign-born bastard by his peers. He was always, ridiculed and all that sort of stuff. Now, Alexander Hamilton never joined the Freemasons. He wasn't a Freemason, but he joined another society. He was a founding member of another society called the Society of the Cincinnati. And you could see he wanted it to make it hereditary. That was for military veterans of the Revolutionary War. And he wanted all these privileges, passed on to them. He was the second president general. George Washington was the first president general. And people complained about it, were suspicious, including John Adams, that, it was like they were just trying to reinstitute the European aristocracy, right? They're trying to reinstitute it, reestablish it in America. And this was what they said they had fought against. So, secret societies, these are things that critics have argued against, or societies with many secrets, like Freemasonry. There was actually an anti-Masonic party that was formed by John Quincy Adams. John Adams, these people were not members of, Freemasons, right? We know Benjamin Franklin, who, was born poor, had to flee to, make a mark, make a name for himself. He was a founding member of, not a founding member, but in fact, probably he was, but he was a member of the Freemasons, right? And so, again, I'm just somebody who's always very suspicious and skeptical of, secret societies or societies with many secrets. And, it's, again, America's about being an individual. Now, although Freemasonry, right, amongst their tenets, they're not a religion, by the way. Amongst their tenets, are that, they espouse brotherly love, service to the community, charity, self-improvement. I learned a lot of these things from reading War and Peace. Again, the main protagonist of Count Tolstoy's War and Peace was a Freemason. His name was Count Pierre Bezrov. His father was the richest man in Russia, had been a philanderer, and he died and he left his wealth to Count Bezerov. We could call him Pierre. Pierre was an illegitimate son, but he left all his wealth and estate to him. And he had trained Pierre, was very brilliant. He'd studied in France. And let me not let the cat out of the bag. Let me let you grab a copy of One Piece and read it. Endure the over 1,200 pages, which I did. I loved it, though. Loved every moment of it. Tolstoy's main protagonist was a Freemason, so I got to see some of the tenets that they have, they espouse. Self-improvement is part of it. So I've given you the list of presidents who were Freemasons. There's no requirement, for you to be a Freemason before you become president. But notably, many people like to espouse or spin these conspiracy theories about Freemasons. As I said, my school, George Washington University, which I graduated from, I went to the law school there. They had many symbols of, Freemason symbols, including the compass, with a square and, the all-seeing eye. You could see these symbols around. In fact, the symbols are prominent in D.C. J. Edgar Hoover, the longest serving FBI director, was a very active Freemason, and he graduated from my law school, George Washington University Law School. So did Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles was the longest serving CIA director and the first civilian CIA director. He was fired by John F. Kennedy for his failure in the Bay of Pigs. So his name will come up. I said I'm going to do a video on John F. Kennedy. Allen Dulles, his brother too, was a Freemason. He also graduated from George Washington University Law School. John Foster Dulles was he was a Secretary of State. He was a Freemason as well, and he graduated from George Washington University Law School as well. There you have it. Isn't it kind of interesting that Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ, they were remarkably close. Our 36th president was kind of close in an odd way to J. Edgar Hoover, and people didn't typically like J. Edgar Hoover. They seemed to have a good working relationship. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover was supposed to have bought Lyndon B. Johnson as his wife a puppy, a beagle puppy, right? So in any event, there you have it. I have provided the list of our presidents who were Freemasons, and no, you don't have to be a Freemason to be a president, even though 15 is not an insignificant number of presidents. So 15 presidents have been Freemasons. Let me stop this video here. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I like talking about American presidents, and I draw attention to color of law violations, pivoting on subordination of perjury and fraud on the court, which I'm suffering in Montgomery County, Maryland. I was framed by Montgomery County Police, who raided me and assaulted me in my home. I'm a law-abiding American citizen. As of May 16, 2023, I was an auditor in the Department of the Navy, and I had reported fraud, and with the Office of Special Counsel and various Inspector General's offices. I'd also filed EEOC complaints, EEOC's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they handle, they're sort of like the HR if you work for the federal government, and they deal with complaints such as discrimination, hostile work environment, sexual harassment. I'd reported these, but I was swatted. Bizarrely, I'd never been swatted before in my life, and so false charges were filed against me by the same police officers who shot me with a taser dart, tased me multiple times, almost killing me, and admitted to wanting to kill me. His name was Jeffrey Ray. He said he wanted to kill me with his Glock. Thank God I'm alive. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.